This is an urgent global problem. According to the UNCCD, as much as 52% of agricultural land worldwide has already been degraded. The soil is becoming weaker. Polluted water is directly affecting more than 3 billion people. People always talk about applying modern technology and advanced techniques to farming in order to develop further, but this is not a sustainable solution. In China, resourceful farmers dared to do something the world had never imagined. They released 1,000 ducks into rice fields, and after 1 year, those ducks had solved all the ecological problems. They even brought many additional profits to local people. Let's begin and find out how these duck armies solved both ecological and economic problems in China. In less than a century, global agriculture has been completely industrialized. Transplanting machines replaced human labor. Harvesters replaced manual work. Airplanes and drones spray chemicals across fields from the United States and Brazil to China. Synthetic fertilizers help crops grow faster, while pesticides control pests on a scale never seen before. In 2020 alone, the world used more than 3.5 million tons of pesticides. Thanks to that, food production increased sharply. But agricultural ecosystems also became more and more dependent on chemicals to survive. According to the UNCCD, more than half of the world's agricultural land is now degraded. The soil is becoming weaker, microorganisms are disappearing, water sources are becoming more polluted, and pests are becoming increasingly resistant to chemicals. In China, the pressure is even greater, because the country once used more than 1.77 million tons of pesticides in 2019 alone. But here, only 40% of farmland is degraded, lower than the global average. They used a special method, but we will talk about that in a moment. This is rice. According to the FAO, more than half of the world's population depends on rice for most of their daily food needs. This crop provides about 20% of all the calories humanity consumes, and it supports the livelihoods of around 150 million farming households, mostly in Asia, where nearly 90% of the world's rice is produced and consumed. But growing rice has never been easy. A rice field does not work like an ordinary field. It is more like a giant artificial wetland, where water, mud, microorganisms, insects, oxygen, and organic matter constantly interact with one another. Even a small imbalance can change the entire ecosystem. But when pesticides and chemical fertilizers are used continuously, the field may still look green on the surface, but underneath, life slowly disappears. Fewer frogs, fewer fish, and fewer beneficial insects. And when that ecosystem weakens, what is being threatened is the food supply of billions of people. Chinese farmers understand this very clearly. Instead of continuing to increase the use of fertilizers and pesticides, some farmers return to a method that has existed for hundreds of years in Asian wet rice agriculture, releasing ducks into rice fields. Today, this system is often called rice duck farming, or the integrated rice duck farming system. It appeared in China, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand centuries ago when farmers did not yet have modern machinery or industrial chemicals. But instead of seeing the rice field as a production floor, they saw it as a living ecosystem that needed to stay balanced. In Gongjiang County, Guizhou Province, China, the Dong people's rice duck system has even been recognized by the FAO as a globally important agricultural heritage system. Here, ducks are not just secondary livestock. They are part of the field. After the rice takes root, about 200 to 300 ducks are released per hectare of rice field, or roughly 80 to 120 ducks per acre. They move constantly through the shallow water, eating pests, young weeds, aquatic insects, and stirring up the mud. Every step they take brings more oxygen into the water and soil, while duck manure becomes a natural source of organic fertilizer for the entire rice field. This system was not created by modern laboratories. It was formed through hundreds of years of observing nature. Farmers realized that a rice field is healthiest not when every living creature is removed, but when the ecosystem inside it is still active. Yes, before humans used chemicals to control rice fields, the wet rice ecosystem had balanced itself this way for hundreds of years. However, when many people see hundreds of ducks moving among young rice plants, their first reaction is usually, "This crop is about to be ruined." They think the ducks will trample the rice, muddy the water, and damage the fragile roots beneath the mud. But what actually happens is completely different. The ducks are almost not focused on the rice plants at all. They pay much more attention to things that move quickly or grow faster than the rice. brown plant hoppers, stem borers, leaf hoppers, mosquito larvae, aquatic insects, and young weeds that compete for nutrients. In other words, the duck flock is doing exactly the job farmers usually have to handle with chemical pesticides. But instead of spraying poison across the entire field, the ducks directly hunt the harmful organisms. Some studies on rice duck farming systems show that weed density can be reduced by as much as 92 to 96% when ducks are released at the right time. Ducks do not just replace pesticides. They are changing the way rice fields actually function. When hundreds of ducks move continuously throughout the day, their feet stir the surface mud like small biological plows working non-stop. This makes the soil looser, reduces compaction, and helps oxygen move deeper into the water and topsoil. Remember, flooded rice fields can easily fall into a long-term low oxygen state. When that happens, anaerobic microorganisms begin producing methane, a greenhouse gas that traps heat many times more strongly than carbon dioxide. But when ducks constantly stir the water and mud, that anaerobic environment is disrupted. Some studies on rice duck farming systems have recorded methane emissions dropping by about 20% compared with conventional chemically farmed rice fields. And that is only one part of the system. When ducks eat young weeds, sunlight is no longer blocked by competing plants. The rice plants receive more light, photosynthesize more efficiently, and grow more steadily. This is a detail very few people notice. Ducks are not only controlling weeds, they are indirectly controlling how solar energy enters the agricultural ecosystem. Meanwhile, duck manure is continuously released into the field like a natural stream of organic fertilizer, rich in nitrogen and organic matter. Unlike chemical fertilizers, which are often applied in strong doses and can easily be washed away, polluting water sources, duck manure is spread evenly across the field little by little throughout the day. In China's Jilin province, more than 1,000 ducks were once released into rice fields to replace herbicides and pesticides. The system focuses on feeding the soil. When the soil begins to recover, small changes appear first. Soil microorganisms increase. Organic matter becomes more abundant, the soil holds water better, rice roots grow deeper, and then the entire ecosystem begins to change. Fields that once had only a flat, monotonous green color gradually begin to hear the sounds of frogs again, along with insects, small fish, and dragonflies. Water birds also begin to return. This is the part many people often ignore when talking about pesticides. Chemicals do not only kill harmful organisms, they also weaken the entire network of microorganisms, beneficial fungi, decomposers, and natural predators beneath the surface of the field. When that network has been broken for too long, the soil loses its ability to recover on its own. But when ducks are brought back and chemical use is reduced, soil, water, and living organisms begin to reconnect. The field is no longer just a place for producing rice, it begins to function as a true living ecosystem. In many rice duck farming models in China, Japan, and Southeast Asia, farmers have realized that they are not only restoring the ecosystem, but also significantly reducing production costs. Field studies have recorded that pesticide use can be reduced by about 50 to 70%, chemical nitrogen fertilizer can be reduced by about 20 to 40%, and the cost of manual weeding also drops sharply because the ducks constantly eat young weeds and stir the surface mud. In some models in Zhejiang and Fujian, the use of agricultural chemicals dropped by nearly 2/3, while rice yields remain stable after the initial transition period. But the benefits do not stop there. Rice produced from rice duck systems is often sold as eco-rice or duck rice at prices about 20 to 50% higher than regular rice in many areas of Japan and China. Consumers are willing to pay more not only for the rice itself, but because they know that the field uses fewer chemicals, has a cleaner ecosystem, and is more environmentally friendly. Meanwhile, the duck flock continues to become a separate source of income. After the growing season, farmers can still sell duck meat, duck eggs, or ducklings. With a density of about 60 to 120 ducks per acre, the same piece of land now produces two different products, rice and ducks. This is something modern monoculture rarely achieves. More importantly, it increases the economic resilience of the entire system. If rice prices fall or fertilizer prices rise sharply, farmers still have income from ducks, and the soil still maintains better natural fertility. This is why many researchers call this model economic resilience. It does not operate like a factory. It works more like a self-balancing ecosystem. Rice supports the ducks, ducks control pests and weeds, Duck manure feeds the soil, and healthier soil supports the rice again. It is a small cycle, but one that can be far more stable. As mentioned earlier, this model has become popular across Asia, especially in Japan. If China shows that rice duck farming can restore ecosystems and increase farmers' income, then in Japan it has gone even further. It has become an entire high-value agricultural industry. Here, this method is famously known as Igamo rice farming, using hybrid Igamo ducks to weed the fields and control pests in rice paddies. The person most responsible for popularizing this model from the late 1980s was Japanese farmer Takao Furuno. He almost turned the rice duck system from a traditional farming technique into an international ecological agriculture movement. But the most interesting part lies in how Japan sells this type of rice. They no longer sell it simply as rice. On the packaging, names such as eco-rice, biodiversity rice, or sustainable rice appear. Consumers are not only told about the stickiness or flavor of the rice, they are also told the story behind the field. Ducks weed the field instead of herbicides, ducks eat pests instead of pesticides, and ducks feed the soil instead of chemical fertilizers. The market has responded very clearly. Some Igamo rice models in Japan are sold for about 20 to 100% more than regular rice, depending on the region and product certification. Many premium rice varieties reach around $13 to $32 for every 11 pounds, significantly higher than mass market rice. What is worth noticing is that consumers are still willing to pay extra, not because they lack food. They are buying a sense of safety, transparency, and the belief that the field used fewer chemicals. This is very different from modern industrial agriculture, where most of the ecosystem behind the food is almost invisible. Buyers usually do not know how degraded the soil has become, how water sources have been affected, or how much life still remains in that field. But with Igamo rice, the ecological story becomes visible. This also reflects a larger trend emerging around the world: regenerative food, climate-smart agriculture, and biodiversity-friendly food. Many market studies show that younger consumers and the middle class in Japan, Europe, and the United States are increasingly willing to pay more for food with a clear environmental story. Food is no longer just about calories. It is gradually becoming an ethical and lifestyle choice. And that may be the biggest reversal of all. In the 20th century, nature was pushed out of the food production system to make room for chemicals and machines. But in the 21st century, nature itself is beginning to become one of the most important selling points. But there is one very important note in this story. This system does not work by simply releasing ducks into a rice field and then letting nature take care of the rest. The timing of releasing the ducks almost determines the entire effectiveness of the system. In many models in China and Japan, ducks are usually introduced into the field about 2 to 3 weeks after the rice has been transplanted. At this point, the rice plants are strong enough to withstand movement in the water. If the ducks are released too early, the young seedlings can easily be trampled, broken, or pulled out of the soft mud. But if they are released too late, weeds and pests may have already grown aggressively, which greatly reduces the biological impact of the duck flock. Too early or too late can both throw the entire system out of balance. The density of ducks is also calculated very carefully. Many technical documents on rice duck farming often recommend about 60 to 120 ducks per acre, depending on the rice variety, water depth, and soil conditions. If there are too few ducks, they're not enough to control pests and weeds or stir the surface mud. But if there are too many, the opposite problem appears. The water becomes too muddy, rice roots become stressed, photosynthesis decreases, and yields may decline. Some studies in Japan show that density beyond the optimal level can increase water turbidity and directly affect the development of rice roots. Even the timing of removing the ducks from the field has to be precise. When the rice plants enter the booting stage and begin preparing to head, the duck flock must be taken out. This is a very sensitive stage because any strong disturbance can affect the number of grains on each rice panicle. Some technical guidelines in Japan and China also emphasize that if ducks remain in the field for too long, their movement can reduce the grain formation rate and directly affect the final yield. Finally, the story of duck flocks in rice fields is not just about agriculture. It shows that sometimes natural ecosystems can solve many problems at once in ways modern industry never expected. From pest control and soil restoration to reducing chemicals and creating extra income for farmers, it all begins with bringing life back into the field. And perhaps the future of agriculture will not only depend on more machines, but on understanding how nature has balanced itself for hundreds of years. If you found this story interesting, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel to keep exploring nature's strange but incredibly intelligent ecosystems.